Well, good evening, everybody. It is Danny from Deep South Homestead on our porch talk time today. Guys, it is very late Monday night that I'm shooting this video. I have been cutting hay. Oh my gosh, it has been so, it's taken me a while. I'm cutting all my fields at one time, and it has taken a while to get it done. And thank the good Lord that we have the Cub tractor and got lights on it and stuff like that, because the weather is actually really good. It's not, actually I got cold. That's why I had to have this long sleeve shirt on. I got cold out there because I was started. It was warm, and then the sun went down, it got dark, and I'm way away from the camp house where I'm cutting, and I didn't want to drive a tractor all the way back to the camp house, get a shirt, and drive all the way back. So I actually kept working, and I was cold. And I come in, and as usual, Wanda had the unit on, and fans are running, and I told her, I says, turn all this stuff off. I'm about to freeze to death, Oh man, it just when you get old, your blood gets thin, and our humidity, it's just bad. We go from 90 degrees one morning or one day, got up the next morning, it was 49 degrees. It was like 50-degree drop, in one day. And basically, not quite that bad today, but getting pretty close. We got, out of all this stuff, this weather that came through, we got 3/8 of an inch of rain. That is it. I mean, it just basically settled the dust. As a matter of fact, I plowed and bedded up rows in the garden the next morning. It just wasn't enough to even wet the ground hardly, where you couldn't even put, the tractor worked fine in the garden. It wasn't too wet, nothing like that. So it's just been one of them crazy weeks. It's one of them weeks that it just seems like the harder you try, the further you get behind. All last week was that way. All through the weekend, and today is no different. And this week is going to be no different either, because this whole week, literally, we are bombarded with stuff this whole week. And I told Wanda, I said I was so tired a while ago. I told her, I says, I haven't even done porch time. Because I literally have not stopped long enough to do anything hardly. I visited with friends a couple of times in the last week, but other than that, it's been nonstop. And that is, most people, when they move to the fall and the winter, that means that their crops are going away, and it's time to start slowing down and everything. In the deep South, it's actually just the opposite. When it's so hot during the summer, we don't get to do much. We're able to, if we do, you just suffer through it. When you get cool days like we have last week, we've had some cool mornings, and then hot during the day, but cool mornings and cool evenings, cool nights. And then the last couple of days we've had, it's been a little bit better. We've been out, I can stay out all day. But as we move into the fall and it stays cooler, that's when we actually start doing things. My schedule for the next month and a half to 2 months is back to back, literally every day something is planned to be done. And I told Wanda, I said, I don't know if it's ever, in the wintertime, that's the only time we can do stuff like this in the fall. And that's why we don't slow down in this time of the year. We actually speed up this time of the year, because we can actually stay outside all day and get things done, and not suffer like about to have a heat stroke in the heat, But with all that being said, I hope where you guys are at, y'all are experiencing a lot nicer weather. I know this coming week, lots of you got some snow, some frigid wind chills, all that kind of stuff, because it's coming all the way down to us. And I know if it's coming down to us, those of you around the 33rd parallel and up through there, y'all are just going to catch it, And it's going to be that way for quite some time. Now, we are still in a very, very severe drought. My pond here at Pecan Grove is now where my pier is not even in the water anymore. When Chris and I put that pier in there, the post was right at the edge of the water. That's the lowest I had ever seen that pond since we built it. We just put the post in right at the edge of the water at that time because it was so low. And now the water is literally 3 feet out from the posts. And I mean, I can walk in front of the pier on dry ground and not even get my feet wet. And I'm a little concerned. If we don't get some kind of moisture in here pretty soon, we could start losing our fish and everything. And if y'all remember, I made a comment. Oh, it's been quite a while back, probably back in the early part of the year. I made a comment that southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and portions of Alabama would become what they was telling us the new Arizona. Now, some of y'all may remember that we were praying that it would stop rain, but they had told me that we're going to come to a point that we would start praying that it will rain. And I noticed that Andy and Megan I was looking at their video where they're getting ready to put their new pole barn and all in, and they were talking about how dry it is there now. Because the early part of the year, it just rained. They got a year's worth of rain in just a couple of months, you know, and now they need rain so bad, and they're not getting it, just like us. Now, I do believe they will get some rain very shortly, according to what I'm able to find out. But here where we live, there's some kind of convergence zone. The weather patterns have changed, and when the Gulf moisture used to come in and meet with the fronts coming down from up north, usually was basically just about right over us here, and we would get a good deal of rain. Well, now that convergence zone has moved about 40 miles north of us. Probably about 45 miles north of us now. And all the weather, when it starts getting close to us, it just dissipates and goes away. But what's about 40 miles north of us now, it just stays heavy raining. And then when it gets over about 40 to 50 miles east of us, it all starts coming back together, and then it rains all over into Mobile and, you know, on up into the East Coast. It done that once before, back in the year 2000. 4 years leading up to the year 2000, we was in a drought then. And I was working in some of the most intense heat I think I'd ever worked in at that point. But what we're experiencing now is even more intense than that was. And we was in one of the worst droughts we'd ever been in since I could remember. But this now is getting to be worse than the year 2000 was. So keep us in your prayers that we might get some rain down here, you know, shortly, because it's making it very difficult. Oh, it's making it difficult to garden. It's making it difficult to just keep up the land. I mean, I'm cutting hay right now, and I'll bet you I usually have to let my hay lay 3 days because it's so thick on the ground. And even though now it's not thick, as a matter of fact, a lot of it never even went to seed heads because we did not get enough moisture in this intense heat. But I'm having to cut it regardless because it's not real deep. It's about 10 inches to 12 inches deep. And for us, that's not deep at all. But I'm having to cut it because it's time for me to put the ryegrass overlay my pastures with ryegrass because the clover's fixing to start coming up. And if I don't cut this, next spring when it comes time to cut it, the ryegrass, if I was going to seed it with ryegrass, then I'm just going to gum up everything just get gummed up with old grass and everything like that. So we have to cut it regardless of what we're going to do with the field. It's got to be cut. And I can't just leave it laying there. I have to bale it. And I have nowhere to put it. My other part of my barn is not built yet. So Tim was up visiting, And I had made a comment to Tim. I had told him, I said, look, brother, just if you can fix you somewhere to put some hay, I'll just give it to you. I mean, because I have nowhere to put it. But it has to come off of the fields. And so we're going to try to work toward that this week, trying to get that taken care of. And Wanda and I was sitting in there talking a while ago before we get ready to go to bed, take a bath and go to bed. I told Wanda, I said, I'm so tired, I don't even know what I want to talk about. You know, I mean, I said, I'm drawing a blank. I said, for the first time in my life, I'm drawing a blank, you know. And we sit there and we chit-chatted back and forth, and I told Wanda, I said, you know, I said, sometimes I watch a few different YouTube people who do chats and stuff like that. And we were talking about it. I said, you know, I can tell by what they talk about because I can go look. You Google hot topics, and all you got to do is just start watching YouTube videos, and when you Google what's the hot topics of the day, and you'll find out why these people are doing it. They're just doing whatever the hot topic of the day is, not what God laid on their heart. And I told Wanda, I said, you know, sometimes we have to look at what the world is doing in order to be able to find out where's God in all this, you know. And I told Wanda, I said, Wanda, why don't you Google what's the hot topics of the day? And she said, okay. I'm sitting here personally, I'm thinking it's going to be what happened to Charlie Kirk, you know, Middle East peace deals, you know, things to this nature, you know, because this was big events that just happened and all that kind of stuff. And she looked at me and she said, you're not going to believe this. What? She said, now Donald Trump is in the top few. She said, but it's Taylor Swift filled about 5 to 7 of the blanks, I think, of things that they was categorizing. Will Smith was one of them. And I said, nobody's talking about Charlie Kirk anymore. And she looked and she said, Danny, he's not even in the top 100 now. And she says, even Bill Gates is I think she said was number 48 or 49. Almost not even in the top 50 hardly. I said, you mean to tell me we've become so desensitized as a nation that the top things that people are Googling are things like Taylor Swift and Will Smith? And she says, I'm telling you, that's what it's showing. And it hit me. It literally hit me at that moment. I said, people are living for the next big event. Now, I think I talked about this quite a while back. But I told Wanda, I said, nobody cares. Nobody really, really cares about anything. They want the next big event. People are they're looking for something to happen. You know, I mean, here in Mississippi in the last week, we had I don't know, I think it was 5 or 6 shootings, and most of them were at school functions and stuff like that, and homecoming games and things of this nature. And I told Wanda then, I said, what in the world is going on? Or has everybody lost their living mind? What is wrong with just going out and enjoying something for a change? You cannot do it. You just literally can't do it anymore and feel safe at it. And I told her, I said, this Donald Trump conjuring up these Middle East deals over there, you know, I mean, you would have thought that would have been a pretty big topic, or the Ukraine is attacking Russia like they are. You'd have thought that had been a topic that no. They're not interested in that. They're interested in stupid stuff. And I'm sitting here going, Lord, forgive us for being so ignorant. And I believe the scriptures is 100% accurate. When the Lord mentions in scriptures there, he said, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And then if you keep looking, it talks about in the latter days of the age, they'll be looking for teachers and preachers that's willing to tickle their ears. They'll not sit under sound doctrine anymore, it says. Stop and think about this. We are literally there. Look at the first chapter of the book of Romans we talked about last week. You know, we went back and re-looked at that and all. I'm like, Lord, I'm just going to have to ask you to forgive us as a nation and as a people. Because it's true. People have lost their minds. I talked with Chris, the boy who helps me out here, the young man. He works at a place where, a mental place, let's just say that, I'm not going to call the name of it, but a mental place. And he told me this week, he said, Danny, he says, I'm not going to be able to come out and help you with anything. He said, this place is filling up with people faster than they know what to do with, and I'm having to stay here and work over extra because people's losing their minds. And I was like, wow. You know, I've mentioned quite often the author of a book, Solar History, Sasha Dobler, talks about solar cycles in this book. And in this book of solar cycles, he mentions how that when the sun gets at particular cycles that it's in, like we're in solar cycle 25 now, that all throughout history, when the sun goes through particular cycles, people begin to lose their minds, and dynasties fall, kingdoms fall, I mean, things like this, nations fall, all kinds of stuff, because people just start going wacko. And in solar cycle 25, now we haven't had a solar cycle like this, what did they say, in 400 to 600 years, somewhere in that time frame. I'm tired right now, but I think it was sometime in that time frame. So that's been back since before we was a nation almost. We haven't had this kind of a thing. And in this particular solar cycle is one of those solar cycles where people are edgy, they're cranky, they're angry. All this is going along with this solar cycle. Probably lots of things that we're seeing in the news. I mean, I don't watch the news, but what people tell me is going on in the news and comments and stuff, emails and all this kind of stuff, it fits right along with what's going on in solar cycle 25 about people just losing their minds. And it goes along with scripture, talking about end time events mentioned in Revelations or Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Isaiah, all these places mention things that's taking place in the latter days of the age, and all this stuff is starting to fit together now. You know? I told Wanda, I said, I'm scared to know. Well, I'm not really scared, but I mean, I'm concerned to know what the next big event is that's going to draw people's attention away from what's going on now. I would have thought the number one thing that people would have been Googling right now would have been the government shutdown. You know, because the government's just shut down right now. They can't agree on nothing up there, like a bunch of children, a bunch of teenagers getting it. Somebody can't get their way. I'm not voting because I can't get my way. You know, I mean, that's basically like a bunch of youngins up there. And you'd have thought something as detrimental as the running of the nation would have people would have been Googling saying, you know, what can be done and all this kind of stuff, or what's the reason for this and all. But no, they're looking at some kind of ignorant entertainment about Taylor Swift or Will Smith, Taylor Swift and Will Smith, that's a tongue twister there, and stuff to that nature. And I told Wanda, I said, what in the world is going on? I can't believe this. I literally cannot believe that what she read to me off of after she pulled that up. I said, this is totally ignorant. No wonder we're in the shape we're in. People have lost their minds. Tim and I sat today on the porch out there, and we had probably one of the best conversations we've had in a long time, talking about some of the events of the day going on and why things is the way they are. And maybe I'll share some of that with y'all in the future, but we both looked at each other and we were like, yep, this is what's going on. And I was blown away by just the conversation we had. I mean, it literally got my attention. And I'm like, Tim, I said, you're right. This is what is happening right now. And then here I am sitting here tonight thinking, while me and Wanda was sitting there talking, I said, you know what? All everybody's interested in is the next big event. They're looking for something bigger than anything that has just happened. Nobody focuses on any one thing anymore. Literally nobody does. They don't focus on anything anymore. They're just ready to move on to the next big event. And I told Wanda, I said, I'm concerned. I really am concerned. Because what will it be? What will be the next big event? We were looking this past week how that China now is becoming a huge threat on our own soil here, because they've bought up so much farmland. They've bought up, they have these big database centers now next to our power grid systems and all that kind of stuff. And guys, they've bought up land all around our military bases. They've bought up land all around our power stations and all this kinds of stuff. We have been ignorant. Literally, we've been ignorant by letting the enemy move in and do what they have done. We're screwed now. We might as well face it. We have done messed up. And now the next big event could be something like the power grid going down. Be very simple to do. Any of our military bases now could be attacked. Really simple, because they own the land all around, a lot of them now. I mean, stop and think about the food systems that they own here in this country. It's quite possible that some of the next big events may be something just in that area. And you rest assured, if something happens in this week, before this week is out, some big event happens, everything else prior to that will not be remembered anymore. And you want to know just how easy it is to forget the past? I'm going to tell you just how easy it is to forget the past. Think back 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Who was running for president, and who was runner-up for president? Who was even running to be president at that time? Think about that. Something as important as a presidential race in the United States of America 12 years ago, most people can't even remember who was running or what was even going on at that time. Because history is something we don't pay any attention to anymore. We just let it go. We remember more. I'll tell you what. I saw this past week. Now, whether it's true or not, I do not know. I saw this past week a clip that at halftime on the Super Bowl, for this coming Super Bowl, that Turning Point is going to put on a presentation not on the channels that the Super Bowl's on, but on some other channel. And many, 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 many people have joined in with them. Lots of country singers and all kinds of stuff. Because, and they want to see how many people will watch halftime on a Super Bowl or how many people will watch them. Because the halftime at the Super Bowls have become so vulgar over the past several years that Turning Point just wants to see, I think it's called Turning Point, just wants to see if just how many people would watch them versus watch his halftime. And I'm interested in seeing that. I want to know. Now, I don't ever watch halftime on football. I don't watch football, period. My brother played football, and I went to some of the games when he played. But as far as just being a football fan, no, I'm not. To me, it's foolishness to watch somebody chase a pigskin around out there. I know it takes skill, and I'm not ignorant. I know it takes skill, but I don't see the, I don't know how you'd say it, but I don't see the necessity in it, I suppose. To me, it's, you only have so many hours to live. And when you spend them sitting and watching something like a ball game or something like that, to me, that's just wasting my life, And that doesn't have to be football. It could be basketball, baseball, tennis, whatever, or just watching TV and period, watching movies and things like. To me, it's just, David in the scriptures makes a comment, said, Lord, help me to number my days, that I might know my end. In other words, David's saying, Lord, help me to use my time more wisely, because I've only got so much time here upon this earth. Help me to number my days, because I've only got so long to live, and I don't want to waste the time that you've given me. And I try to live by that every living day. That's why I don't sleep but maybe 4 hours a day. Because the scriptures teaches me there'll come a time when we'll all sleep. And work will cease for us. So I know that time is coming. So I work now. I work. I try to do as much for the Lord as I can. I try to do as much to take care of my family as I can, and I try to use my time wisely, because I know the day will come when we will all sleep. So, guys, stop and think about what I'm saying. Am I not correct in saying that most of the population, now it may not be y'all, I may be preaching to the choir, I don't know, but is it not correct that everybody's looking for the next big event to take place? Even Christian people are looking for the next big prophetic event to take place. And the Bible does teach us, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. And guys, that's where if you're going to be looking for anything, look for the Lord. Look for the Lord if you're going to be looking for anything. Because at least when you're looking for the Lord, you're looking at things that are true, things that are accurate, things that we know are not a lie, things that are going to come to fruition. So think about that. Take your focus off of the next big current event and think about the Lord today. Thank you, guys, from Deep South Homestead.